The amber glow of the Hive chambers cast long shadows across the perimeter fence as Elias Thornfield completed his nightly patrol. 6 years on Arcadia Colony had hardened him to the loneliness of guard duty, but something about tonight felt different. The native moons hung low and bright, illuminating the sprawling honeycomb structures that had become humanity's lifeline on this distant world. Elias adjusted his grip on his pulse rifle, the weight familiar against his palm. The hives weren't just food sources, they were Arcadia's heart. The nutrient-dense honey produced by the engineered bees contained compounds that helped humans adapt to the planet's atmosphere. Without it, the colony would collapse within months. A shadow flickered between storage units 6 and 7. Too large for local wildlife, too deliberate for the wind. Security override Delta 9, Elias whispered, and his helmet visor switched to thermal imaging. A heat signature pulsed behind the nearest extraction chamber. Not human. Definitely sentient. Colony security. Show yourself immediately, he called out, weapon raised to firing position. The figure emerged slowly from behind the storage unit. Tall and willowy, with skin the color of twilight dusk. A female alien, one of the indigenous Astrali people who kept their distance from human settlements. Her large eyes reflected the moonlight, pupils dilated with fear. And there, clutched against her chest, a container of golden honey, its contents gleaming. Theft from colonial resources is a level 1 offense, Elias recited automatically. Place the container on the ground and step back. Instead of complying, the alien clutched the container tighter. Elias noticed then how thin her arms were, how her ribcage protruded beneath the simple woven garment she wore. Her hands, just 2 of them, with fingers not unlike his own, trembled. "Please," she said, her voice translating through his comm unit with a musical lilt. "I cannot return without it." Elias kept his weapon steady. "The law is clear. Put it down now." "My children," she whispered, and something in her voice made Elias's finger ease off the trigger. 6 days without nourishment. The youngest cannot survive another night. A tear, actual moisture, not unlike a human's, slid down her cheek, catching the moonlight. The honey is all that will sustain them now. Their systems can process nothing else available in this season. Her voice broke. "I am Vela. I am not a criminal. I am a mother." The weight of the rifle suddenly felt wrong in Elias's hands. Colony protocol was absolute. Detain. Report. Process. No exceptions. But as he looked at Vela, not as an alien or a thief, but as a desperate parent, something shifted inside him. "How many children?" he asked, lowering his weapon slightly. 3, she answered, hope flickering across her features. "The youngest barely has seen 2 seasons." Elias made his decision then, one that would change everything. "Follow me," he said, disabling his comlink. "And stay quiet." The tunnel entrance was nearly invisible, concealed beneath a tangle of violet-veined vines at the base of a stone outcropping. Elias followed Vela through the narrow passage, bending low to avoid scraping his head against the crystalline formations that jutted from the ceiling. His helmet's luminator cast eerie shadows as they descended deeper into the alien dwelling. "We must be quick," Vela whispered, her steps light despite her urgency. "Mila weakens with each passing hour." The tunnel opened into a small cavern, where bioluminescent fungi cast a soft blue glow across the sparse living area. Elias stopped short at the threshold. 3 small forms huddled together on a nest of woven fibers. The children were unmistakably Vela's, the same twilight skin, the same delicate features, but painfully thin, their breathing shallow. The youngest, presumably Mila, lay barely moving, eyes closed, and limbs limp. The other 2 watched Elias with a mixture of fear and curiosity, their large eyes reflecting the blue light like miniature moons. "You brought a human," the oldest whispered, shifting protectively in front of the youngest. "He allowed us food, taro," Vela said, kneeling beside them and opening the honey container. She dipped her finger into the golden substance and touched it to Mila's lips. The child's tongue darted out weakly, and Vela repeated the process patiently. Elias removed his helmet, letting it hang at his side. "How long have you been living here?" "Since the cold season began," Vela replied, not looking up from her task. "Our village was destroyed in the great storm. We were separated from our clan, with no access to the flowering plains." Her voice trailed off. Elias watched as color slowly returned to Mila's cheeks. The middle child, a quiet, solemn thing, stared at him with unblinking intensity. "This one is called Nari," Vela said, noticing his gaze. "She has never seen a human up close before." Elias knelt slowly, maintaining a safe distance. "Hello, Nari." The child tilted her head, but didn't respond. "I need to return to my post," Elias said, standing again. "If I'm discovered missing, they'll send search parties." Vela looked up, alarm crossing her features. "You risk much by helping us." "I'll come back tomorrow night," he promised, "with more supplies, enough to last you a week." As he turned to leave, Vela caught his hand, her touch surprisingly warm against his skin. "Why would you help those who are not your kind?" Elias thought of his sister back on Earth, of her 3 children he would never meet. "Because your kind and mine aren't so different after all." Later, as he slipped back into the patrol rotation, falsifying his location logs and hiding the supply pack he prepared from the commissary, Elias knew he had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. His heart raced with fear, and something else he couldn't quite name, as he planned his return to the small family hidden in the shadows of the colony's edge. "The weave must be tight," Vela instructed, her nimble fingers demonstrating the pattern. "The nectar loses its potency if exposed too long to air." Elias fumbled with the fibrous strands, earning a giggle from Nari, as his attempt collapsed into a tangled mess. 2 weeks had passed since their first encounter, and each night he managed to slip away brought new discoveries. "Our technicians could learn from this," he admitted, watching Vela complete another perfect collection basket. "We lose nearly 30% of harvest to evaporation." The children had transformed since he began bringing supplies. Mila now scampered about the cavern with boundless energy, while Taro had overcome his initial distrust enough to bombard Elias with endless questions about human technology. Nari remained quiet, but had taken to sitting beside him during his visits, occasionally touching his uniform or hair with cautious wonder. "Your people believe we are primitive," Vela said without accusation. "Yet we survived on this world for millennia before the skies brought yours." Elias nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. "Colony leadership doesn't understand your ways. They see only what's different, not what we share." The firelight caught the angles of Vela's face as she looked up. "And what do we share, Elias Thornfield?" "More than either of our kinds realize," he said, his voice softer than intended. Later, as Mila slept curled against her mother and the older children listened rapt to stories of Earth, Elias found himself watching Vela. The graceful movement of her hands as she spoke, the slight tilt of her head when she listened. Something dangerous and beautiful was growing between them, fragile as the bioluminescent fungi that lit their nightly conversations. "Show me your stars again," Vela requested as the children finally drifted to sleep. They climbed to a small opening in the cavern ceiling, a natural skylight that revealed the vast expanse of Arcadia's night sky. Elias pointed out constellations named by human settlers, while Vela shared the ancient names her people had given them thousands of years before. "That one," she said, pointing to a cluster of 7 stars, "we call the Mother's Embrace. It appears when the harvest season begins." "We call it the Pleiades," Elias said. "The 7 sisters." Their hands met between them, fingers intertwining naturally. Neither acknowledged it, but neither pulled away. "Your colony grows suspicious," Vela said after a long silence. "I have seen more patrols near our hiding place." "Supply shortages have been noticed," Elias admitted. "Nothing linked to me yet, but questions are being asked." Vela turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the starlight. You endanger yourself for us. Some things are worth the risk, he replied, and when her hand touched his cheek, the universe seemed to hold its breath between them. Officer Thornfield, you stand accused of resource theft, unauthorized contact with indigenous life forms, and violation of colony quarantine protocols. Administrator Bennett's voice echoed through the detention chamber. How do you plead? Elias stood straight-backed before the colony council, his security uniform stripped of its insignia. Not guilty to theft, guilty to the rest. Murmurs rippled through the assembled officers and council members. The evidence against him was damning. Supply logs that didn't match inventory, mysterious absences from his patrol route, trace DNA from the Astrali found on his equipment. You admit to consorting with the aliens? Counselor Wexler asked, incredulity sharpening her tone. I admit to preventing starvation of innocent children, Elias corrected. I admit to learning from a culture that survived on this planet long before we arrived. These innocent children belong to a species that has repeatedly sabotaged colony operations. Security Chief Havers interjected. Their kind destroyed the Eastern Greenhouse Complex last spring. Different plan, Elias said. Velas people lived peacefully until the storm displaced them. So you claim to know these creatures intimately, Bennett said, the implication hanging heavy in the air. Elias met his gaze unflinchingly. I know them well enough to understand they're not our enemy. The chamber doors burst open before Bennett could respond. Guards raised weapons as Vela strode in, her twilight skin luminous under the harsh colony lights. Taro and Neri followed close behind, while Mila clung to her mother's leg. You will not punish him for mercy, Vela announced, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber. Security, Bennett shouted, but Elias moved to stand between the guards and Vela's family. If you harm them, you prove everything wrong about this colony, he warned. They came peacefully, unarmed, to speak. At least give them that right. For 30 tense seconds, the fate of everything hung in balance. Then, unexpectedly, Counselor Wexler raised her hand. I move to hear the alien testimony, she said. Scientific curiosity, if nothing else. What followed changed the course of Arcadia colony forever. Vela spoke of her people's ancient knowledge of the planet's cycles, of sustainable harvesting methods that could triple honey production. Taro demonstrated their weaving technique that prevented nutrient loss. Even Shy Neri stepped forward, presenting a small pouch of seeds, plants that, when grown alongside the hives, would enhance honey production. But it was Vela's final words that silenced every objection. Your kind sees only what we might take from you, she said, her gaze sweeping the council. You never asked what we might give. Elias Thornfield was the first to see us as equals. For this crime, you would punish him. When she reached for Elias's hand before the entire assembly, the gesture conveyed more than words ever could. Something ancient and unbreakable had formed between species, between worlds, something that began with mercy and had bloomed into love. The new settlement rose at the boundary between colony territory and Astrali lands, neither fully human nor fully alien in its design. Curved structures of colony composite materials stood alongside traditional Astrali dwellings, while hybrid gardens flourish under the care of both species. 6 months after the confrontation in the council chambers, the Convergence Project had become Administrator Bennett's proudest achievement, though everyone knew he had initially opposed it. The integration of Astrali harvesting techniques had increased honey production by nearly 300%, while human agricultural technology helped the aliens cultivate previously difficult crops. Elias walked the central path, nodding to human and Astrali residents alike. His security uniform now bore a new insignia, a honeycomb integrated with an Astrali symbol for harmony. As head of the Joint Security Force, he trained members of both species to protect their shared interests. The ambassador from the northern clans arrives tomorrow, Vela said, falling into step beside him. Sunlight caught the silver circlet that marked her as the Astrali representative to the colony council. Taro is beside himself with excitement. He's done well as a cultural liaison, Elias agreed, pride evident in his voice. Nari's translation program is nearly finished as well. They'd reached the dwelling at the settlement's edge, their home, a unique blend of human efficiency and Australia aesthetics. Inside, Mila was engaged in intense concentration, her small fingers manipulating a holographic display as she learned human mathematics. "She has your focus," Vila observed with a smile. "And your stubbornness," Elias replied, earning a playful nudge from her shoulder. Later, as the alien sun set and the children slept, Elias and Vela stood on the dwelling's observation deck, watching stars emerge above the landscape that had once divided their peoples. "The council has approved our petition," Elias said quietly, taking her hand. "The first official human-Australia union, recognized by both governments." Vela's eyes shimmered in the starlight. "Our ancestors would find this strange beyond imagining. And yet," Elias said, drawing her close, "I've never known anything to feel more right." Her lips met his. Different in texture, but perfect in fit, a physical manifestation of the bridge they had built between worlds. What had begun as an act of mercy in darkness had blossomed into something revolutionary. Proof that compassion could transcend biology, that love could find its way across the stars. "They're calling it the Thornfield Accord," Vela murmured against his cheek. "The new framework for cooperation." Elias smiled. "I would have preferred the Vela principle. Mercy before judgment, understanding before fear. Perhaps for our children's generation," she replied, her hand resting on her abdomen where, against all biological odds, a new life was beginning. The first true child of two worlds. Above them, the constellation they both knew by different names shone bright in Arcadia's night sky, its light falling equally on all who looked up in wonder, regardless of the world they called home.